All right, let's unpack one of the biggest paradoxes in the global economy today. China has built, without a doubt, the most powerful industrial machine in history. But here's the twist. That very success is creating a massive crisis at home and, believe it or not, a growing threat to the rest of the world. So let's dive right in.
You know, this analogy just perfectly captures the feeling, doesn't it? When you see a deal that seems way too good to be true, whether it's a $5 steak or a super cheap high-tech electric car, your gut tells you something's off. There has to be a hidden cost. The real question is, who's picking up the tab?
And the sheer scale of this deal is just mind-boggling. 30%. That is China's slice of everything manufactured on the entire planet. I mean, it's the world's factory. No question about it. But how it got to this point? Well, that's a story of a very deliberate and, in many ways, pretty ruthless strategy. So first up, let's look at the part of the story everybody knows. That undeniable, jaw-dropping industrial miracle that has completely reshaped the world. This is the shiny, incredibly successful part of the plan.
And look, we're not just talking about t-shirts and toys anymore. China is absolutely dominating the industries of the future. We're talking about what they call the new three exports: EVs, solar panels, and batteries. Those alone are now worth over $120 billion. They control more than 80% of the entire global solar supply chain. And you have to understand, this did not happen by accident.
No, there was a playbook. A three-step, state-driven strategy. Step 1, you prioritize the whole system. You build the entire supply chain from top to bottom, even if some parts aren't profitable in the short term. Step 2, you throw your companies into the global arena. You force them to compete with the best in the world to get tough and innovate. And step 3, you bet big and you bet early. You pick the industries you want to own, like green energy, and you just pour in state money for the long haul. Okay, but every miracle has its price. And in China's case, that price is being paid almost entirely at home. It's creating this really dangerous imbalance between its strength on the world stage and this growing weakness festering from within. And to get why, you have to understand two totally different ways of thinking about an economy. In the West, right, the goal of economic growth is pretty simple: make life better for regular people. It's about household consumption, welfare. But in China, the logic is different. The economy serves the state. The goal is national security and total dominance over supply chains. The average consumer, they're a distant second thought. And you can see the results of that thinking everywhere. You've got a real estate crisis so bad that huge developers are on the verge of bankruptcy. People at home aren't spending money because confidence is shot. And there's so much overinvestment that factories are just churning out stuff that nobody in China can even afford to buy. It's created this bizarre situation that's been described as winning the battlefield but losing the home. And this isn't just a theory. The data backs it up. This chart here shows the PMI, which is basically a health check for the manufacturing sector. It's simple. Any number below 50 means you're shrinking. And look at that. For 8 straight months, it's been in the red. That's a huge, flashing warning sign of some serious weakness at home. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. This weakness at home is actually what fuels the threat to everyone else. See, with a struggling domestic market, China has no choice but to export its massive overproduction. But it's also figured out how to use its control over supply chains as a political weapon. And to really get this, we need to define a key term: economic coercion. What is it? Well, it's when a country uses its economic muscle, things like trade sanctions or cutting off access to supplies, to punish other countries for political decisions it just doesn't like. It's basically turning business into a weapon. And this is not a hypothetical. I mean, look at the playbook in action. Lithuania lets Taiwan open an office. China literally erases the entire country from its customs system. All trade, gone. Australia calls for an investigation into COVID's origins. Boom, your beef, coal, and wine are banned. South Korea installs a missile defense system. Say goodbye to Chinese tourists and K-pop. They've done this over 100 times to more than 18 different countries in just the last few years. This quote from Japan's Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae just hits the nail on the head. You can't apply the normal rules of trade and diplomacy here, where you keep business and politics separate. It's all one and the same. So what this creates is something called asymmetric retaliation. It sounds complicated, but it's really simple. It's super easy for any country to do something small that upsets Beijing. But the economic punishment China can dish out in return is just massively, disproportionately huge. And that gives them incredible power to bully other countries on their own sovereign decisions. So, all of this is pushing the world towards a critical fork in the road. And when you look at where things are heading, there seem to be two very, very different futures ahead of us. Okay, so scenario one, Chinese dominance. They win. They completely control the global markets for EVs, solar, AI, you name it. But the cost of maintaining this system becomes so high that it eventually suffers a kind of glorious collapse, like the Soviet Union. Powerful on the outside, but totally hollowed out from within. Then there's scenario two. The world fights back. Countries raise tariffs, they block Chinese exports. All that stuff they're overproducing comes flooding back home, triggering a massive banking crisis and a deep, painful economic stagnation, maybe even worse than Japan's lost decade. And that leaves the rest of the world with a fundamental, really difficult dilemma. Do we choose efficiency? Do we take the cheap, high-tech goods that China's machine pumps out, which could seriously accelerate the green transition? Or do we choose sovereignty? Do we protect our political independence and our own industries from being controlled or punished? And we have to remember the crucial point here. The engine that makes this entire system work is a population that has been guided by a powerful national story to accept personal sacrifice, to put the long-term power of the state ahead of their own personal immediate well-being. Which, at the end of the day, leaves us with this one final massive question. It's a trade-off with no easy answer, but it's a question that every single country now has to face. Efficiency or sovereignty? Which price is the world willing to pay?